My name is Steven MacWhinnie, and I'm up here in Aomori Prefecture, which is where I was in ALT from 2007 to 2012. So I've been here quite a long time. I now work in Hirosaki at Hirosaki Gakuin University. It's about an hour's drive from Aomori City, which is where I was in ALT. So I haven't really moved around much at all since I came here nearly 20 years ago. So today I'm going to be talking about classroom culture shock. But before I begin, I do want to preface this by saying that really every situation is different, is very different. Every school is different. The teaching style of your JTEs is going to be different. So hopefully I can share the sorts of experiences that I had and the sort of things that surprised me. But at the same time, please don't be surprised if when you arrive here, your situation is completely different. That's totally possible. Okay, so kind of going over things in order, I first want to talk a bit about the classroom structure. So when I was in ALT, I taught in elementary school and junior high schools. I was employed by the city's Board of Education. And so that meant that a typical month might be 2 weeks spent at junior high school and the other 2 weeks going to various elementary schools around the city. So if you talk about the kind of the classroom dynamics, they're quite different between elementary school and junior high school. Elementary school classes tend to be much more interactive, much more playing games with the students, getting them involved with things, whereas junior high school classrooms tend to be more maybe old school would be a good way to phrase it, where the students kind of sit and listen and receive knowledge, although that is changing quite a bit in the last decade or so. So let's talk a little bit about first elementary school and what sort of roles you might expect as the ALT and also what the JTE might do in that elementary school situation. So going into an elementary school, you're going to meet most likely with your JTE before going into the class, and that JTE, who's actually the homeroom teacher, may or may not speak English, and so you're going to have to figure out what you're going to do before you go into class. Then that means when you go into class, it may be that you are the teacher completely in charge, where the teacher just says, okay, onegaishimasu, please run the class. Or it might be that the teacher says, okay, let's do this together, and you're, going back and forth. Or it might be in some cases where the teacher's like, okay, I'm going to run class, and, you can just, kind of hang out, and I'll call on you to help with things. So it really can vary quite a lot. For the actual, classroom, activities and the way things kind of run in elementary school, it does vary a lot, but it's going to be much more interactive. Most of my classes kind of revolved around, let's say, introducing or reviewing some vocabulary or perhaps some key sentences, something like that, and then doing some sort of activity with the students. There's tons of different games you can play. I'm sure if most of you are preparing for classroom interactions, you have perhaps some ideas about that. And even if you don't, when you get here, you'll be able to get advice perhaps from other ALTs who are in your same location or from those elementary school teachers. And so, if you're put in charge, then you might have to walk in and say, let's start class. And you might have to, by showing pictures, introduce that day's, target vocabulary, that day's target sentences, and then, in some way explain the activity, probably mostly in English, or perhaps you might need to use some key phrases in Japanese, depending on what it is you're teaching. And that'd be, of course, a situation where you were there completely alone. There's also, of course, classroom situations where it's much more like a team teaching, where the Japanese homeroom teacher is going to be there to help facilitate and help the lesson kind of run smoothly. So they might be the one who says, okay, let's start. They might be the one who gives the students the cues about, when you're changing from activity to activity. But it's very much dependent. There are going to be some situations perhaps where the Japanese teacher takes the lead completely and, start the class and then maybe just asks you, okay, so please teach them this or please explain this. And then really is in charge of the overall dynamics of the classroom. The same situation is kind of generally true for junior high school, although what you actually do in the classroom will be a lot different, whereas elementary school is much more likely to be playing games, so like moving about, talking. Junior high school much more likely to be, let's say, having the students write something down or have the students, write something down and then make a pair, make a small group and chat. And just like in elementary school, the level of control that you have in the lesson will vary quite a lot from school to school. It can be where the teacher literally says, okay, here's the point today, go and teach the students for me. To again, situations where, unfortunately, maybe you're just used to say vocabulary or, repeat after me. Luckily, I think those such situations are really decreasing. The Ministry of Education is working quite hard to kind of change things, but, it's very hard to tell until you're there. But for all these things, one thing to keep in mind is to, don't freak out and don't worry too much, because, the Japanese teachers are also used to working with new ALTs. As the JET program is only 5 years, so they're used to that turnover. So, if you make mistakes, they're not going to be angry. Hopefully, they'll help you with that. So that's kind of like the general structure. You might find it quite different to the sorts of education that you received yourself in junior high school or in elementary school. I can't speak to high school, but from what I've been told is kind of a continuation of junior high school. You may find that a lot of the education is, particularly in junior high school, very teacher-centric as opposed to being student-centric. And so that can be quite a shock. Even, when I was in an ALT years ago, whenever we had trained teachers come, they tend to be quite shocked at the amount of control that the teachers exerted over the classroom, and how there tended to be quite a limit on what the students were kind of allowed or expected to do. And so, kind of just have an idea that, the classrooms will be quite different, but you can kind of expect a range of being, totally in control to kind of not being in control. So I think that kind of naturally leads to, so if you're put in control or mostly in control, what do you do when students aren't listening? So before I go into that, I want to mention that it's quite likely that you'll have students in your class who have decided they don't like English or they hate English. And because they don't like English, you, as the ALT and the representative of this foreign language, might be the target of their scorn. Generally, keep a smile on your face and be positive. You can usually win those students over, but you might have students who are not listening in class, who are misbehaving in class. Now, again, every situation is different, but usually as the ALT, it's not the expectation that you'll be disciplining anybody. You won't be, yelling at them or, calling them out for misbehaving. Generally speaking, that should be the homeroom teacher or the Japanese teacher's responsibility to make sure that the students are at least behaving somewhat. Having said that, once you get to junior high school, you may have students who just sleep all the way through class. And I knew some ALTs who would try to wake them up. Personally, I didn't, because again, that was not my responsibility. But don't be surprised, and also don't be surprised if the Japanese teachers kind of just say, yeah, he was tired because he had practiced yesterday or something, and make excuses. So it can be very, very different. There are perhaps some situations where stepping in might be good. I think back. When I was a junior high school student, I think teaching some first graders, so they're about 12 to 13 years old. There were two kids who had been bullying each other for quite a while, and then midway through class, one of them just got up and punched the other one in the face, and then jumped on him and started pounding on him. And the Japanese teacher was kind of freaked out. She was quite a small woman, and so I had to step in and literally pull the kid off, kind of hold him back because they were, going to hurt each other. So, there are situations where it might be necessary for you to step in, but that again, that was once in 5 years. So it's probably not going to be, a big thing that comes up. But again, it also might be different if, the teacher steps out for a minute and leaves you in charge. You might have to be able to say something. Generally speaking, once you get to junior high school, if you get angry in English, the kids usually, what's this? They can't really understand and get upset. And junior high school and in elementary school children, generally speaking, tend to be more positive towards English. So you're probably not going to have big problems. Having said that, for elementary school particularly, keep in mind that a lot of kids who have some mental disabilities, so autism or other sorts of things, most often will be kind of mainstreamed in the English classes. And so you might have kids who are hyperactive of ADD, or who can't really, participate quite the same way their classmates can. And so, it's just a matter of being kind of aware that that situation might exist. Again, as the ALT, it's not your responsibility to, kind of specifically teach them, but just, be aware that if you're doing some activity where you're calling on every single child in elementary school, particularly, there may be some kids who can't do that. Ideally, you'll be told before class, but you might not. Again, depends on your school. Some of my schools are very good and say, hey, this student is joining. They're usually in the separate, special education class. maybe they can't do this, maybe they're too loud, but we'll take care of it. And other times, just the kids showed up and was jumping off the walls. So every situation is very different, and it's really going to depend on that communication, which of course is also very, very different. I wanted to finish by talking a little bit more about relations between you and your Japanese teacher, and also the Japanese teachers and their students. Again, I haven't been in education outside of Japan for quite a long time, so this might also mirror what is happening, say, for example, in America. But I can't say. But generally speaking, the teachers have very, very close relations with the students. For elementary school, the kids are there from, let's say, like 8 a.m. until 3 p.m. every day. So it's a good chunk of their day. And for elementary school, at least, quite often those same students will have the same teachers or the same set of teachers, perhaps all the way through the 6 years. So the teachers are going to have a very, very good idea of, the students' personalities, what they can and can't do. And if you had trouble in a class, they're going to be able to talk to you about the specific students, if you have time, and explain perhaps, why someone can't participate. They might even, warn you, or they might even say, this student really likes English, and perhaps, help you prepare to perhaps, talk to that student a little bit more. So at least in elementary school, the teachers are very, very, let's say, like parents, I suppose, in taking care of the students. Relationship with the ALTs can be good and bad. Most elementary school teachers are very friendly, but they might not speak English much or at all. I had some schools where the homeroom teachers spoke good English, others where it was zero. So you might have some difficulties if you don't speak Japanese before you go. I found it actually very, very useful for learning Japanese going to elementary schools, because in my kind of small town placements, nobody spoke English, which was quite good. That can make it difficult. When you get to junior high school, the student-teacher relations are a little bit different. It's only 3 years, so they don't quite have the long time, length of time to learn about their students. But they will know a lot of details. They'll know details about like a family life. They'll know, of course, about what the students' like hobbies or after-school activities are. And again, these are all things that they might mention to you, or you might talk to them about, particularly if you have any troubles in class with classroom dynamics. The teachers really do know a lot about that. But keep in mind, depending on the school, it may be that you are really taken in as part of the school and included in things and expected to like talk about and understand what the student's situation is. I was very lucky, and many of my schools were like that. I went to the morning meetings, we talked about the problems with students, but you also might be at schools, or you may only visit schools occasionally. And so you're very much treated kind of as a guest. And so you come in, you teach a lesson, kind of play with the kids, make a good impression, and leave. And so, when you're getting there, don't be too shocked by those differences, and also those differences in expectations. Okay, so I think I've probably talked too much, but I want to kind of give a general idea of what's like actually happening in the classroom, although it's a very big range. I'll be sticking around afterwards, so if anybody would like to ask me questions, I'm always very happy to talk about my experience, more specific things that you might be thinking about. I can also talk about that. But I think that is about my time and all for me, so I'll pass it back to Julia. Yes, thank you very much.